Navaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
About the importance of abhyasa. Abhyasa means repetition. Repetition means it's not like one time you make a change and then that will be a change. As we saw yesterday, that there is a whole brain which has created pathways based on your patterns of thinking, and to break free from them and to create a new country road of wisdom takes time, right? So this is not Krishna is saying. So yesterday somebody was asking, so all this neuroscientific method is mentioned in Adi Shankaracharya's Bhashya? No. But what is mentioned here is what? Repetition. So that means he understands that moving away from the habitual way of thinking and creating new ways of thinking requires effort. That is mentioned. Right? And now what we can do is we can supplement with neuroscience knowledge to say that how indeed it is so that it takes time. Okay, the next. Abhyasebhya samarthasi matkarma paramo bhava madarthamapi karmani kurvam sindhimavapsisi. Who wants to read? Who will read? Yeah,
if you do not have the capacity for the practice of this yoga either, may you become one for whom action dedicated to me is paramount. Even doing actions for my sake, you will gain success.
So now, what he's now again talking about doing action for my sake. So that the first time he talks about offer your actions to me, what did we see Isvara as law of dharma and how important it is to align to it. Now, here he says, offer what? Do karma for what is the word that he uses? For my sake. Madartham. Madartham karma kaunteya. So, now this is something which is yet another whole big idea that we need to understand, and that is that Isvara, as we saw, is the intelligence which pervades the whole universe and it connects us all. So that means there is a whole big interconnection. There is a whole network of connection. So who we are today is not only the actions that we have chosen to perform, but also your dad has contributed, your dad himself gained a few values from your granddad or grandmother. What happens is, so that means what that person chose to do is actually affecting your culture and your way of being. Okay? So there is a very nice story in Kathopanishad. There is this father who was doing a ritual, and he was giving away all the old cows and old things which were useless. So this young boy of 11-year-old, Nachiketa, goes to his father and he says, when you do a charity, you can't get rid of useless things. You have to give something which is of value. So now the father is busy, he has finished a ritual, he is giving away danam, and the boy keeps going to it. He goes the first time, the father doesn't listen to him. Then the second time he goes, father still doesn't listen to him. The third time he goes and the father gets irritated because he's in the middle of doing something and the boy keeps asking, why are you giving all these? He doesn't say that. He keeps saying, who will you give me to? He doesn't say, why are you giving useless things? Because in his mind, he's going to be far more useful to whoever he gives him to, then all these useless things. So father gets irritated and he sends him to Lord Yama. And he says, I'll send you to Lord Yama. Lord Yama is Lord of Death. So now the boy takes it seriously. So he wants to go to Lord Yama, which is Lord of Death. Now the father says, my God, I didn't mean it at all. I just said it out of irritation. So therefore, just forget about my words and you just stay here, right? It's not like you have to take it literally that go and see Lord Yama. Now the boy tells the father that we come from a family where the words that we give, they count. So that means we don't just loosely say things and then forget about it. Suppose you start a tradition now, that now you're telling me, I just told you, now I didn't mean it, so forget it. So then he says, right now you deviate, and over 2 or 3 generations, what will happen? Our words that we have been carrying, which carry the weight, will not count anymore. You understand? One deviation at one point, then what happens? Repeated deviations, and then the whole value, family value is lost. So now he says, hey, we have to hold our family value. Remember what kind of family we are coming from. There are people who actually have integrity. They say things that they mean. They stick to their words. So now don't be that person who deviates from it. What a beautiful. So that means that what you carry today is going to affect future generations. And if you begin to compromise, and if you begin to kind of say, okay, now let's deviate a little bit, then what happens is, over generations, all those values that your family is holding, that begins to disintegrate. So this is why you are living in an interconnected world. What you do today not only affects you, but it affects just not only the person in front of you, but also it has many, many effects across generate time and the width. So that means how you behave with your kids will have implications on how the kids grow up. The kids will interact with other kids, or they will have future partners, future children. All of that is going to be affected. So this is why immediately when you bring Isvara in your life, you begin to see your interconnection. That means it's not just about, I don't want to lie to others, I don't want to, hurt others, but you have to actually perform your duties and responsibilities with certain amount of vigilance, certain amount of alertness, and that particular idea is called Swadharma. She loves it. Samanya Dharma and Swadharma, everyone loves it. Okay. So, what does Swadharma mean? So, Samanya Dharma means universal ethical values. Do for my sake means there is an order of Isvara which pervades everything and interconnects us. Either you recognize the order and align to it, and actually many people will benefit, or you disregard it and you disturb the whole order, and then the results of that come back to you. So, so this is what we call Swadharma. And Swadharma in English doesn't mean ethical values, it means duties and responsibilities. In the morning class we saw that the Vedic Dharma itself had it was dividing the society as ashrama, varna and ashrama. So what does it mean? Ashrama means depending upon, now the next question is, what is my duty and what is my responsibility, right? So you need to have some structure which tells you what your duty is and what your responsibility is. So we had a structure which we saw in the morning, one of the structures. What is ashrama? So that means depending upon each stage of life that you are, there is a corresponding duty and responsibility. We saw. when you are in brahmacharya stage, your main job is to study, then grahastha, you earn and you provide for the family, you nurture people around you. Vanaprastha is a time of reflection and sannyasa. If you recognize in this lifetime, then it is about contemplating on what will give me the freedom that I am searching for. So this is what we call, so that means even for one person, the duties and responsibilities change as the stages of life change. It doesn't remain only one thing. Right? But right now we don't follow this kind of a thing very strictly. So now we have, if you want to live in a modern context, then you still have to figure out what exactly is your duty and responsibility. So what you need to do is, so this is our teacher, right? So he used to say that you are the individual and you are living in an interconnected world. Whether you recognize or not, you are living in an interconnected world. So who are you connected to? Who are you connected to? Excellent. So that means within family you can say there are some specific relationships. So you are related to your parents as a child. Then you are related to your, suppose you are married, then your husband, that's also family. And you are playing a role of a wife, I mean if you are a female. Then your children, suppose if you have them, then you are parent. Then suppose you go to work, then you have maybe two, if you are like somewhere in the middle, you have subordinates and you have boss, if you are in the middle. So you are relating. Then you live in a community, so you are a community member. You are a national of a citizen, so you have duties and responsibilities towards the nation where you live. And then finally you can say you are a citizen of the world, and therefore you also have some responsibility towards humanity. Now, because this is actually the graph of interconnectedness, whether you like it or not, it actually is a connection. Unfortunately, what happens is we either are totally narcissist and only think about ourselves, or at the most we think about what? Our family and maybe at work, yes, because you have to do well. But all these other responsibilities seem to be like totally out of any this thing for us. Now also the problem is that what we are aware of, also we don't do it so well. So that means that the whole life is lived with only just like what suits me, what is convenient for me, and really, or even if I'm very concerned about people, I don't actually even know how to show my love properly, right? Love becomes control, love becomes dependency, so even that becomes a problem. So that means when Lord Krishna says, do karma for my sake, what it means is, I have created a world which is interconnected, and you are not just supposed to be here to be a recipient and just draw from the universe. You are here also to participate. And your participation in the world has to improve, and not only improve, but it has to become wider in nature. So now, what we do need to see is that every individual has all these different roles, and each role has a different script. What does it mean? That suppose when you are a child, if you are a child with reference to your parent, what you do is different when you play another role of a wife with husband. So it's not like you do always the same thing. What we do need to do is we play many different roles, and each role has a changing script. Now, what is more interesting is that even within one role, suppose you are playing a role of a child with reference to a parent, it's not one thing that you have to do. As life changes, what will happen in your initial stages of life, parents play a very huge role to bring you up, to give you education, to give you all the opportunities, resources and all of that. But as suppose you begin to get old, then you're older in the sense that in your 40s and 50s, now the parents are becoming dependent on you. So that means now within that one role, what your script is changing. So that, and so if you continue to remain this child, then what happens? We are not playing our role effectively. It disturbs. If you still remain a child, then what will happen? The husband is constantly connected to the mother, then wife will say, what is this? So this is a common problem in India because they all live together and it's a very big thing. So this mother-in-law is a huge issue in India. So because the husband still is very connected and the wife cannot kind of take it, right? So then same thing, right? Suppose you get married to a person, and then what happens is, the first year of marriage is honeymoon. And then what will happen? Different situations begin to arise. The relationship itself has to undergo a change, right? That this is why the Vedic ritual is something which is beautiful. That we primarily, of course we have to, but primarily we are sakha, we are friends. Because this friendship, what will happen, different stages, you never know what kind of challenges life will bring. But if you've lost friendship, then what will happen over the years when this romance begins to wane, what will happen? There will be a distance. And as I showed yesterday, that suppose one person is slightly aggressive, suppose, and the other one is passive. Each one has to actually learn to, this one has to learn from the other and become more understanding, and this one has to speak up more. But what happens over a period of time is, this person shows more and more aggression and this person gets scared, so becomes more and more passive. So it started like this, but what happens? It began to increase. What it is supposed to do is to reduce, because each one has to actually learn from other. If you are a friend, you have to learn from other. So then what happens? You just kind of live with that person, but the real distance, the real friendship is going, the distances are growing, the patterns are becoming even more pronounced than what we started with. So that means all this is a common problem. So what we have to learn is, this passive person, when this person is trying to put pressure, he has to find courage and speak up. And when also this person, what they have to learn, that this person is trying to understand and all that, so I have to become an equally understanding person. I can't just use my force and my tantrums and my anger to shut anybody else out. This is a bad strategy. So this is something that we both have to learn from each other, but unfortunately it doesn't happen. But life is meant for that. And life together is meant for that each one helps the other to grow. Because when two people come very close together, what happens is, everything that for once you feel, you fall in love. And when you fall in love, what happens is, your normal defenses go away. Normal kind of, then what happens? Your real person comes out. And when your real person comes out, that real person has all kinds of things, feeling of lack of love, feeling of whatever that feeling, I'm no good, or I'm jealous that he will go away. So all kinds of issues are there. So they will all start surfacing. You didn't even know that they were there. Now you are close to a person and everything has started surfacing. It's almost like a mirror, it shows you. So either you kind of keep projecting on the other, that this person is like that and that person is like that, why did I ever marry this person, I made a big mistake. Or what happens? You begin to, that may be true also, I don't say no. But who knows, right? So you don't want to. At the same time, in any situation, what you do need to do is you also have a responsibility. That is that person may be who that person is, but you also need to see where is it that I have to improve, right? So this is the opportunity that a close relationship provides for everything to come out, and then the purpose is to sort it out, right? And then also to see the relationship itself after 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, it changes, and we need to accommodate that change and move along. Same thing with children. How initially your care and love is absolutely critical for the children, but at some point you can't be overprotective of them. You have to let them go out and discover life, make their own discoveries, let them explore, let them also see, taste how to face failures. All of this is so important. It's not just, you protect them, but if you overprotect them, what happens? They don't know. Their resilience to face situations begins to go down. They don't know how to deal with the world. So that means this is also now work. Now, there are some people, yesterday I was talking, this is just one example, that suppose you are a perfectionist. So for a superior, the boss, it's lovely to hire a perfectionist person. Why? Because they will work really hard, they will perform well, they will be driven, they are ambitious, so they will do that. But the pressure that they take on, what do? They pass it on to their subordinates. So for subordinates, the same person is like me. So that means that they say, oh my God, this person is like totally inconsiderate. So you'll have a total, so it's interesting. The same person in two roles is a different person altogether. So, and we don't even recognize all of this, right? So it also gives us an opportunity that, or sometimes we are not able to speak up with reference to boss, and he's pushing us, so we say yes, yes, yes to him, and then take out all our pressure on our subordinates. All these behaviors will begin to happen. And what is this? Living a life of service. You want to perform your Swadharma well, means you have to be careful about all of these issues that I talked about. So that means it's a life which is an alert life. All different aspects. Human being is complex. It's not just one person. There is a multifaceted nature. We are multifaceted. And in each interaction that we do, a given aspect of ours comes out. And so now you're given, before you just continued to do what you did and you didn't care and you just survived. But now if you want to living a life of connection with Isvara, you need to bring about changes. You need to be more aligned, you need to be more considerate, you need to do that. And therefore there is at work community. So somebody was just today mentioning that how is it that, many Indians say that. It's a common thing that I hear, right? People keep their homes so well, but when they go out, it's a mess. So that means this community feeling that I belong to this community, I need to take care of it, is not just like my home. So this kind of sense of community and one's responsibility towards it, we have to actually extend our consideration for that. Even nation. Right? You are a citizen of a nation. And many times what happens is we love to complain about the leaders. So in India it's so true. I was talking with Intensive, and anything that happens, we project all our anger on the leaders. He's like this, she's like this, they are like that, whatever, right? But what actually we need to say is, I'm a citizen of the country. They are probably doing what they can. What can I do for my country? In whichever way, not in politics or anything. What have you done for your country? In whichever way. instead of complaining, if you can convert that energy, if you believe in something, really, then you have to start doing it. Then what happens, that dissatisfaction and complaint turns into your care and concern. So this is your responsibility towards nation, and then finally your responsibility towards the world. Practically, what is your responsibility towards the world? What will I do which will make a difference? Well, at least I can say for myself, people ask me very often, right, that how you're a teacher now, Vedanta. So how do you think how are you contributing to the world? Yesterday somebody interviewed and she asked. So, and that's an interesting question, right? I'm giving some talk and I'm going, what contribution I'm making? So that means, if I can influence some human being to think a little bit more than what eyes can read, act slightly differently than what they are used to, handle their emotions slightly better than what they have been, carry a little better self-image than what they have, I have made my contribution. Why? Because that same person in any area, if that person changes, how many others are impacted by that change? This is how, as Rajoshik was saying, it becomes exponential. So that means you make that difference to that person. That person then what? Changes the lives of some few people around. That will impact somebody else, and that will impact. So that means the person has made impact and touched lives of so many people that the person knows and the person doesn't. Otherwise, how are you going to go around on the street and say, I have some great truth, come and listen to me, come and listen to me? You can't do that in this time. Nobody will. In fact, people will send you to mental hospital. So you can't do that. So what you have to do is find your own slot. See what you are good at. What can be your contribution? And you do that little thing. And that little thing will in turn impact so many people that you cannot imagine. And over a period of time, what will happen is, as you begin to start, what happens is your sphere of influence begins to increase. So nobody starts being a CEO. Everybody starts as a person who enters a company. Then at that time you have a certain the sphere of influence. If you do that job well, instead of always complaining about the boss, then what happens, over a period of time you rise up and you reach middle management. Then you have a higher sphere of influence. You can use your wisdom to make better choices, which will impact yet so many other people. Then maybe over a period of time you will reach a certain position where you can impact so many people. So that means in this world, what happens is, instead of constantly complaining about this one is like this and that one is like that, the whole energy we have to redirect in saying what is important for me. And what can I do for what is important for me? And as my sphere of influence increases, then either I can artificially abort and I can say, no, I don't want any more. But as the opportunities come, I can just go along and I can, touch lives of that many people. So this is something that is what we call contributing to Isvara's order. Because Isvara has already created a world which is governed by laws and it is interconnected. And Isvara has given you free will to guide your life. Either you don't understand the order and mess up, or you can understand the order and not only just do the minimum to survive and to kind of make your life comfortable, you can become a contributor. So this is what he says, participate in my creation. Now, the other one thing that we have to keep in mind, and that is that each of these roles that you play will have some challenges at one point in time. There is no role that we play which has zero challenges. So that means in any relationship, kids, by the time, wait till you have teenage kids, all the parents are complaining, coming to me for how to handle their teenage kids, right? So the husband-wife, the parent relationship, all, in any workplace, everywhere, community, you're not happy with your community, nation, you're constantly complaining about something or the other. Then in the world, all the time, right? Trump is like this, all the time, something or the other is wrong. So that means in every place, you will never find a totally comfortable and 100% satisfaction. There are challenges. And it's not like one challenge will come after the other. They will all emerge simultaneously. So when they all emerge simultaneously, then what happens? It becomes overwhelming. It becomes, oh my God, now where did I start and what life has become, right? So this is what happens. Now you need to find something which will not only enable you to play these roles well, but also deal with the challenges well. So what is that thing, what is that understanding which will give you that wisdom? So that understanding is that you enjoy a unique place in this universe, which is your unique place, and who has connected you to all these? Isvara. Really. You didn't choose your parents. Even if you chose your job, you certainly didn't choose your boss. And suppose you chose your boss, that boss left and some other guy came. So that means there are so many things that you can't control, but all of this is within Ishvara's order. Your placement in this world is in Ishvara's order. When you understand that, what happens is, the person who's relating to Ishvara is called what? Bhakta. Bhakta is not the person who is constantly doing bhajans and praying and going to temple. That's not called Bhakta. Bhakta is the one who's trying to bring Ishvara in one's life. And where is Ishvara? Ishvara is everywhere. So in every transaction of yours, you cannot lose sight of Ishvara. So then, what is this? A Bhakta who is fundamentally related to Ishvara. All my pens are all broken. This is also okay, sorry, thank you. Okay, so if you are relating to Isvara is called Bhakta. And who has placed you in all these different roles who has placed you in these different roles? Ishvara. So therefore, you no longer remain a child, you remain a devotee child. You become a devotee child, Bhakta. You don't just remain a wife, you become devotee, Bhakta wife. You don't just remain what? A parent, you become Bhakta. You don't just become a kind of a person at work, you become a bhakta. Community, you become a bhakta. What is this going to do? How is that going to change anything? This is going to change because that placement requires what? Playing roles, and the changing demand of the roles. You will be far more aware of your duties and responsibilities and not be just governed by what I like, what I dislike, projecting my anger on people, projecting my dissatisfaction on others. All that will go away. Life will become far more alert. So now, because in each of this, it's governed by laws of dharma. So that means I can't transgress dharma. When I I have a responsibility towards my parents just as they are getting old. It's not like I just kind of, put them in a secondary place. In each of this, it will happen. And when the challenges come, instead of again projecting your anger on others or feeling overwhelmed, what you will see is what challenges are part of every role. You will enter into a problem-solving mode. What can I do now in order to solve this situation? So that means this being a bhakta gives you that a little layer of protection. Layer of protection when you deal with the world. When the world is showing you things and you are not seeing it with this eye of a frightened small individual. You are constantly keeping in mind the bigger picture and your connections, your duties, your responsibilities, and not all these dissatisfaction, but gratitude and responsibilities, contribution. The whole mindset undergoes a change. What can I do in this situation? So this is what we call, it kind of is a buffer, that's the word that I was using, towards all the challenges. Because if the challenges are coming to you, it's not because the world is unfair, or the world is random, or the world is not compensating you enough, but it is because there are some cause and effect relationships. And if there are some causes, then you need to identify those causes and do what you have to do to solve it. Now, what is another important thing that we need to understand is that a bhakta is also very much aware of that not only I have responsibility, what is it samanya dharma I have to do. I know what others want from me, and I also know what I want from others. So what it means is that in each of these role playing, we need to also draw our boundaries. What does it mean? Suppose you are being good to somebody, but that person is abusing you, any role. Then what happens is we kind of let them abuse you because we either are in love or because of whatever reason, right? Or you feel this is your duty or whatever, right? So that means, because why? I know very much that I don't want to be hurt, and if I let somebody hurt, and if I don't speak up, then I'm going against Isvara's order. That's not called being nice. It is called going against Isvara's order. So each of the role comes with a boundary. You don't get abused by people. That is also a huge learning in life. Huge learning in life means then suppose your boss is bullying you, suppose. Then you have to learn to speak up. Speak up not in an accusatory manner or whatever, but you just have to state facts. It's not like you have to fight with people. Speaking up doesn't mean fighting. So I have an interesting story to tell you. It just happened like 1 month ago. So one lady, she comes to me, and I know her, and I know her 3 daughters. So now I had heard her story from 2 other daughters that I know, but she is rendering a story which is so different from the 2 daughters are rendering. So the 2 daughters that I know, they tell me that my mom is very, very partial to our eldest sister. Right? This is the sister, 2 sisters telling me. She's so partial to my eldest sister. She's constantly looking after her, and we 2 are kind of ignored. I heard the same story from 2. Now, this mother comes and she says, my eldest daughter is abusing me so badly. So it doesn't gel, right? Because the other 2 are complaining that the mother is so looking after the elder sister, and now mother comes and tells me that my eldest sister is so mean to me. Eldest daughter is so mean to me. So this is what you see, that what exactly? So what happened? Now this is, so I started talking to mom. I didn't tell them that the other 2 sisters are. So I started talking to her. So I said, yeah, so what happened? So she herself told me. She says that this eldest daughter of hers, she had some asthma problem when she was growing up. So when she had asthma problem, so she says, as a mother, you look after the child who sometimes is slightly sick, right? I mean, who is struggling and all that. So now she says, I looked after her so well, and I was constantly looking after her because she had a little bit of a setback. So how that given phenomena was perceived by the other 2 sisters. The other 2 sisters thought that my mother only loves our eldest sister and doesn't love us enough, right? So that is creating a perception. Then, so I said, oh, so then you're looking after her, so what's the problem now? So the problem that she didn't figure out, but I kind of figured out. So now, when you're over looking after the person and over protecting of the person, you at times spoil the person. Right? So you don't draw enough boundaries, you don't kind of guide the person, you yield and you yield and you yield. So what happens is that person who you are spoiling and being loving, she throws, what is the way that they do? They throw tantrum, and they know definitely that her mom will yield. So over a period of time, there is a pattern which is set between the eldest daughter and mother. The eldest daughter asks for whatever, and the mom gives it. Now, this eldest daughter, somehow, I don't know, life was not so good, I don't know what, for whatever reason, she had cancer. So now, this eldest daughter, she has cancer, so to the whole world, she is kind of not pretending, but she's showing as though she is totally in charge, she is in control and whatever. But whatever frustration that she has, whatever sadness or whatever, where does it come out? Mother. So that means now the whole world tells me that she is coping with it so wonderfully. Now the mother is complaining that my daughter is so abusive towards me. Then so I said, why don't you tell her something? She says, no, as it is, poor girl, she's suffering so much. She had asthma when she was young. Now poor girl, she's going through this cancer. So now if I say something, it will increase her sorrow. So that means I don't want to say it. But then I said, how do you feel? She says, I feel so bad because I love her. The other 2 daughters are resenting, she herself said, because I give a lot of attention to her, but she is the one who's abusing me the most. You see the complexity of life, complexity of relationship. So now I told her, so then she didn't want to tell anything to her daughter because she was still thinking well for her daughter. I said, yeah, of course you will think well for her daughter, but please don't think that you are doing her a favor by not saying anything. Why? Because there is a law of dharma out there. And first, because what? She can abuse you, but can she get away from the consequences? She can't get away from the consequences. You may not say anything, doesn't mean that she can't get away from consequences. There is a law out there. Secondly, that suppose there is a law out there, and right now it seems as though she is getting away because there is no response from you, right? But what is it doing? Giving her more license to be more abusive. So are you doing her a favor? Because what are her consequences going to be? Even more grave. Same thing like Duryodhana. Pandavas wanted to be nice guys. Duryodhana wanted the kingdom for himself. They said, okay, let it be. Let him have it. Then Duryodhana wanted to, he invited them to this black palace and wanted to burn it. And they escaped somehow, but they let go. Then he invited him to play game of dice and all. Shakuni, he knew that he is a cheater. And then he allows it. Let go. Or let it be. Maybe he is better now. What? No boundaries. No boundaries means disaster. Then it led to so much suffering. But even that so much suffering, 12 years in the forest, did it reform Duryodhana? No. It did not reform Duryodhana, and what was the consequence? Mahabharata. War. So that means, so I told her, I said, you know what, that you think you're being nice to her, but at some point in her life, she has to learn that her behaviors have consequences. And consequences not only for the mother, but also for her. So you're not doing her any favor by keeping quiet. You have to tell her. How do you tell? She says, how can I tell her? Right? So this is you've never learned anything to talk about anything, so then now you don't know what to say. So that means you need not tell her, why are you so rude to me? You don't need to say that. But every time she's, kind of, being rude to you, one thing that you have to say is, it really hurts. This is the truth. It hurts me to hear such rude words from you, throwing tantrums. I'm feeling sad, and I do care for you, and I do want to wish you well. What will happen is, it's interesting, because then, even if at that time she will suppose she throws a tantrum instead of listening to you. This is a very common thing. People say, what if I speak and she doesn't listen? Yeah, possibility. But what is the karmani eva adhikarasti? But you have done what you have to do. If not today, if not tomorrow, 1 year from now, whenever, 15 days from now, 1 year from now, that person will think about it. Because human heart is such. Human heart is, this is what we say, what is a natural program? Everybody else understands, I don't want to be hurt, and everybody also understands, others don't want to be hurt by me. There are layers and layers and layers of distortion which has kind of made them lose sight of that. But because they have lost sight of that, you cannot become their accomplice. Otherwise, what will happen? They will further lose sight. And you will be again. So when you are not able to draw the boundaries, you are against Ishvara's order, it will turn into resentment. It cannot but turn into resentment. or sadness or guilt or whatever, you cannot be happy in whichever distortion it has taken. So that means this living, performing your swadharma at every level. It is what? It comes with doing what you have to do and drawing your boundaries.
I just wanted to ask a question about, if you talked about daughter-mother relationship, you take this subordinate-superior relationship. Pushing back has tremendous consequences. I see all the time power play. Me too, is what is it? Some people abused you and you couldn't say what you wanted to say because you wanted to be a star, someone is a director. So the immediate bad consequences of pushing back. You get fired. You don't get a job. In a competitive world we live in, there are powerful people who take views. So that relationship, pushing back has a huge consequence.
That's true. So that's a very good point. Right? Suppose, I have worked with the UN in a huge bureaucracy, so I know exactly what you mean, right? So not all bosses are great, and they kind of,
most of the bosses are not great.
So, that's true. I think because what happens is, with this power and this thing, they develop a certain kind of, if they don't have Isvara in their life, if it is a bhakta boss, they will have the perspective. Right? But if it is not a bhakta boss, it's so easy to lose perspective, totally. So, what I did, I can only speak for I can't solve everybody's problem. I can only speak for myself. So many times, many things that, I'm a thinking person and I'm not basically quite afraid. I'm pretty cool. So what I used to do is, instead of, suppose my boss did something or felt something or whatever, or kind of was thinking about, we were like policy advisors. So we had to actually give policy advice to countries. So it was a big job. And suppose they think in a certain way and I think slightly differently and they feel that their thinking is the best or whatever. So I don't want to go and say, oh, this is a narrow perspective, oh, I have a much bigger perspective. She will definitely fire me, right? She or he, whoever. So the way I found is, instead of going and telling her that this is not right, this is what I think, the way I used to present it is in form of a question. So what happens is, you ask her, for example, why did you suggest this? They feel that you are interested. So interest means, because you are not accusing, you are not giving your judgment, you are just asking a question. So in fact the boss feels very important. If you go and ask a question, then they think that you want to learn from it. And it is good, it's true, why not, right? So I would ask her, and her or him, I had many different bosses, but I'm just referring to one given boss, but I had many. So then they tell you that in a conversation, you can mix your ideas and you can say, yeah, but why not like this? But it's not like I think it is like this and it has to be like this and what you're doing is wrong. Not that way. So you enter into a conversation and then guide the conversation in a way that you are actually guiding, but the person actually thinks that you are just talking and you're just suggesting without coming up with this, that that your idea is not good and I have a better idea and you better listen to me, or being dismissive. Nobody likes to be dismissed. So this is, you have to find this community. This is why this Wharton, the lady, she said the biggest problem is communication. So that means either we communicate and we tell people off, and obviously it has major consequences, we explode, or we bottle everything. And we say, oh, because we are guided by our fears, if I do this, then I'll be fired. So many of our decisions are based on fear. They are not based on what is important to us. The whole life has to change. I don't want to, but I really have made so many unconventional decisions in my life. But the only, I may have made many mistakes. I'm not saying I'm some great person, not at all. The only thing that I can say is that my decisions were not guided by fears. They were guided by what I believed in. And somehow, grace of Ishvara is with me. Somehow, I'm taken care of. Yeah, I may not be the most whatever person, but I'm happy with what I am. So that means either your decisions have to be guided, many fear, what will others think, will others like it or not. These are all the ways of thinking which are secondary actually. You have to learn because you are given a free will. And your free will and your decision making has to be guided by what you believe in. Everybody else may agree with you, may not agree with you. Over a period of time they will agree with you. I left, I was working with the UN and I was in my 20s and I left my job to study with Swamiji for 3.5 years. Which parent would like it? Tell me.
No one.
Nobody. Exactly. Because you are into Vedanta, right? Suppose you are working, you have a great job and you tell your parents, I'm leaving everything and I'm going to ashram for 3.5 years. Who will like? And obviously they try to convince me and they try to do this and whatever. But ultimately, even at that age, right, this is what I believe in. And when I said that, so the one thing which you took I generally don't talk about my life, but just that you asked me, right? So the one thing, I was having a conversation. My parents were good generally, but they were asking me, right? They were not just somebody who will say, yeah, go do what you want. But one thing we were having a conversation, one thing, then he stopped asking me. My last sentence made him stop asking the question. So I told him in a conversation that, and so he was saying, yeah, what would life be like after 3.5 years? You have a great job. Now you leave everything. Who will give you a job back? And it's true. The future scenario is uncertain. You don't know. And what you have in hand, you are giving up. So you don't know what life will bring. And what if life kind of doesn't bring anything? Then what? Right? So all these kind of rational questions he was asking me, right? So one thing I said, then he stopped asking me. So I told him that, you know what, I have achieved reasonably good stuff in life. If I were to die today, one thing I would regret having not done the most, and that is this study. So I said, if it is so important to me, why should I wait? Why should I think it will happen in the future? Why should I have to do what I believe in right now? What is the most important thing for me? I have to do it. And when I said that, he didn't ask me any more questions. He said, yeah, please go ahead. And he was very happy. He luckily saw me how my life turned out after that. So that means that much strength we all must develop in our life. Otherwise, our life is, we give our power to somebody else, then we cry. You have to learn to own that power. What will give you that strength to own up to your power? Your relationship with Ishvara. Otherwise, we are all weak and vulnerable. So that means, this bhakta means it's another ball game altogether. The kind of strength, this kind of conviction, the kind of, how you operate is totally different. Because through everything, your relationship is with Ishvara. This is why when I come here, really, before every class, I pray. And I really pray that God, let me do justice to this amazing teaching. Let me not add my own biases to this amazing teaching tradition that is going on. And this is why sometimes I have to be strict. Why? Because in that I have to get you all to be that person who will ultimately get aligned to Ishvara. Otherwise we all remain loose, vulnerable, flimsy, superficial. That is how we are. Not everybody. No, this is how, I was like that. Yeah, why should I talk about somebody else? From that, you have to become that. That requires some effort and connection with Ishvara.
Neema, a question is relating to the quote which said, one has to be honest, paraphrasing, and say when they are hurt. Agree. My question is, how does one know whether that hurt is based on personal conditioning?
Okay, so that means unless you begin and enter a conversation, you'll never find out. So this is why, that's a good point. When you enter a conversation, you don't start with saying what I think is right. You can say, this is what I feel, let me explore, let me engage in a conversation to find out what the truth is. Then what happens? You're not afraid of saying what you have to say, but you're equally open to listening to what others have to say. And maybe at the end of the conversation, you may revise your opinion. And in fact, you will recognize that it was actually my perception and not what that person did. But you will not give yourself that opportunity if you don't enter in communication. That is something, our biases only get corrected when we begin to enter into conversation with people and openly, right? Not with a prejudgment. So that is how.
So that's my swadharma in that
That's
moment to enter the
exactly.
conversation.
Yeah. That is your swadharma there.
But
I would like a clarification. At the same time, you say that's a mistake that we often do is to invest only 2 or 3 branches and forget the other one. And at the same time, it seems that when you invest in your, for example, community, then opportunities come, and it's part of that dharma to size them. I don't see how you can do both, because very often if you size what opportunities come, for example, in work and community, it will take more and more time, and the price for that is not to invest the other. So how in Vedanta you can invest both at the same time?
Yeah, I understand. So what Solange is asking is very good. So this is what we call, it's true, that there are conflict between roles, and the way she explained it is, suppose you decide to contribute to the community, suppose you are working, and you decide to contribute to the community, that would necessarily mean less time at home. This is what you mean, right?
I mean, when opportunities come, you become,
Yes.
you do good job, and then you become head of community.
Yes, exactly. So that means that you become head of community, then you have less time at home, then your kids are neglected. This is, this is a common thing. Where I would like to say is that, see, you have to play some roles, and all the roles cannot be equal at all times. In some stages of your life, one role will take little predominance. The other role will have to at times take a little bit of a side seat. The only thing that I can say is that that role which is kind of taking the side seat, you can probably reduce the time. You have to probably reduce the time because there are only 24 hours, but it need not be the quality. So that means, suppose you come home, right? Before you had 4 hours with kids or whatever, now you have 2 hours. But in these 2 hours, if you are totally preoccupied, or you are so tired that you go to sleep, there is no communication, then it is sacrificing. But suppose in these 2 hours you show your love, you ask your kids what, then what happens? It's not necessarily the number of hours, but it's the quality. So that is something that we all have to understand, that it's true that relative weightage for all these also will change over a period of time. But what we have to do is not just totally disregard this and only do this. That is the problem that we have. So let me give you an example. These are all real examples. Somebody came to me. She's a young girl of some 20 years old, right? 20 years old. Somebody sent me to her. Now she tells me that her mother is divorced, but she's head of some big company. So she's really busy. So she says she doesn't have father because they are separated, and my mother is never at home. My mother is never available, my mother is always busy, she is traveling, and I have, like in her school, they have parent meeting, she's never available. I take competition in piano, she's never there. House needs some maintenance, she's never there. So she says, so I said, now then what? So she says, I've been kind of learning to cope, but now I am breaking down. I'm breaking down, and there are days that I can't even get up from my bed because I feel so lonely and I feel so left alone. So I said, did you tell your mom about that? That you are feeling lonely and you are feeling... And she said, I tried to tell her. Then the mom says, I'm giving you everything. I'm sending you to the best schools, I'm sending you to piano classes, I'm sending you to sports, I'm doing everything and all you do is complain. This is a typical kind of a spoiled rich kid who's privileged, and you give them everything and then they complain. Totally dismissive. So that means in that conversation, the mother could have been, or even generally, right? So whenever she was at home, so then I said, she said the only time I have with my mother is dinner table. But there also she's watching her mobile, she's constantly talking on the phone, she's never available. So that means you can spend that 1 hour. Our Swamiji was amazing. He said, look into the eye of the child. Talk to them. Make them feel understood. Make them feel loved. Explain to them whatever, and tell them a little bit that I'm working hard and this happened in my life. Today this was a challenge. She'll be interested. But you're in your own world, you don't have any time, then your mind is always occupied with something else. You're never really available. The child is lonely. In that 1 hour, if you had made that little conversation with the child, looked and encouraged, asked what did you do in school today, how was it, laughed a little bit, and the child will feel, it's not that people are not stupid. She's so clever. She says, I understand that my mom has a very big position and therefore she has to spend less time than all the other moms. She's very lucid about that. But how is it that she's never available? So, it's not necessarily the quantity of time, but it's the quality of time. So, this is what we call Swadharma, when you bring Isvara in your life. Every role that you play is played with alertness, with certain understanding, with certain responsibilities. At the same time, in each role, some boundaries. Boundaries means you have to stop people when they... Yes.
Can you also say you would become a bhakta towards yourself?
Excellent. What do you mean by that?
So I was just looking at the board here, and then I just noticed that in the middle it didn't say bhakta, and that to me looked like
so
you're missing out on a Krishna relationship.
Yeah, very good. So I depicted it here. The individual is a bhakta, but let's put it here. what difference would this make? Can you tell me?
Well, I think, as I understand it, if you're not, for example, saying what you want, or indeed just setting your boundaries and making sure that you have enough time to look after your basic needs of, eating well and resting well and whatever, then you have no time, or feeling like you have no time to give to anyone else.
So let me continue the story of this 21-year-old, and then now she's coming to me with this problem. So now what do I tell her, right? Because now her mom is like that. So, and she has told her, and the mom is not changing. Maybe she can continue to talk. Maybe mom will change. Who knows? But she can't wait till her mom changes to feel better. This is how we give our power away to somebody else. When somebody else does this, then I will feel better. And that what that person does, how much that person changes, is not in your hand. So the whole life goes feeling helpless. So that means in this bhakti, so I told her two things, which are, I said, this is a fact, your mom, this is from what you say, from your perception, this is what your mom is. And you have tried to talk to her, and she's not really able to even see what you mean. And she's got in her own world that I'm doing my best, and that's what I can do. And then she's just spoiled and just complaining. That's mom's story, right? So I said, now, for rest of your life, you are 21 years old, you have a long life to live. Either you can live your life thinking or feeling lack of love, or you can decide to lift yourself. Because your life is in whose hand? So I said, this lack of love that you feel, now the only real way to heal it is what? Give it to somebody else. What you felt. So she has a younger sister. So the younger sister also feels the same because the mom is never available, right? So I said, now with reference to your younger sister, your older sister, so the very love that you have missed with reference to your mom, instead of complaining and waiting for her to change, what do? You give that love to your sister. This is how you heal yourself. What you lack is you have to convert it. This is what we call conversion. Conversion, instead of becoming a victim, you have to convert it. You have to give it to somebody else. In giving somebody else, you heal yourself. Then I asked her, so she has a boyfriend. So I said, how is your boyfriend? She said, he is very nice and very loving. So then, okay, then you have one character where there is a lack of love, but you have another character who is giving you a lot of love. So also think about it. See your life with its totality, not from one point where there is lack. And you can begin to change. You can, because it is in you. Give wherever you can, and when others give, receive it. Because sometimes when there is a lack of love in your life, even when somebody is giving it, you create a block. You can't receive it. In the conscious mind, you want it so much, but in the unconscious mind, you reject it because the close relationship has created hurt. So now you don't want it because it reminds you only of hurt. But you want love, but you're afraid of hurt. So your decision is made on protecting you against hurt. All it's layers and layers and layers of confusion and entanglement. So now you have to straighten your thinking. The straightening of thinking means you have to bring Isvara in your life. You have to start with I need love, I don't, and I'm open to receive love. It may not come from here, but it will come from somewhere else, and it's wonderful. If I myself keep closing, then I'll never receive love. And the second thing, that the very thing that I miss, I have to begin to give. I have to give, and then what is the law of karma? What you give comes back to you. then it will come back to you instead of complaining. So this is in your role playing, Lord Krishna is saying, bring me in it. So all the distortions within distortions will, you all have to start correcting it. So you become a simple, honest, genuine person with integrity. And you don't have all these complicated thinking. So, the next verse. अथैदप्यशक्तोऽसि कर्तुं मद्योगमाश्रितः सर्वकर्मफलत्यागं ततः कुरु यथात्मवान्. Who will read this? Yes.
If you are not able to do even this, being one whose commitment is dedicating all actions to me, then with this disciplined mind, give up the result of all actions to me.
Okay, so that means now he is giving many different ideas to relate to Isvara, and every time he says, if you can't do this, do this. If you can't do this, do this. Or you can do everything, right? So he's giving you many ideas of how to be a bhakta. What he says, sarva karma phala tyaga. So now he says, when you, with reference to one's choice of action, he brought two things. One is dharma, the ethical values, and the other one is swadharma, which is your duties and responsibilities. Now he says, if you can't do this, this is with reference to your action. When will you? Because suppose your distortions are too many in so many different areas, it will take little time for you to put it all back on track. So in the meantime, Lord Krishna is saying, Sarva Karma Phala Tyagaha. What does that mean? When the results come, you have to understand that if my causes are all over the place, the effects, I can't always expect them to be exactly as I want. So the results that are going to come to my life are going to be of four types. More than what I want. Equal to what I want. Less than what I want. And opposite. Who hasn't experienced one of all four? One of the four or all four? All of us. There's nobody who's an exception. Suppose you don't have Isvara in your life. Isvara in form of the order. The intelligent order which is governing every aspect of your life. What will happen is, at each of these levels, it looks as though it's only when it is less, it will be problematic. If it is equal or more, it will not be problematic. But actually, at each of these levels, there will be some distortion. If you don't have Isvara in your life. If it is more than what you expected, what could be the distortion? Arrogance. Pride. In arrogance, there is also this a little bit of element of looking down on others. Now, what is, so you can say, yeah, I'm arrogant, I've achieved so much, so what? So what means what? you are living in an interconnected world. Right? So that means your attitudes are not just your attitudes, they affect others. So that means the minute you are arrogant and you look down on others, how is the person who is being looked down upon going to feel? Not good at all. But the world is connected in a way that you need participation of others in your life. Suppose you are a boss and the person doesn't feel good working with you. Then what happens? That you need that person's participation. But a person who is not feeling good with you, what is going to be the kind of participation? The participation is going to go down. And as it goes down, your performance will also, because you depend upon her for her or him or whoever for your performance. So your performance also ultimately goes down. So that means through your attitude, what have you done? You have created your own decline. Because there is never going to be a point in time that you don't need anybody. From the head of department you become, you need participation of everyone for your department to do well. But if everybody feels bad with you, then their performance will go down, and as a result the department performance will go down. So that means this arrogance, we may think we get away with it because nobody will come and tell you. Because as Indresh said, that suppose you go and tell your boss you're getting very arrogant. What will happen? Boss will fire you, of course, right? So that means you feel as though you get away with it. Because nobody has the courage to go and tell you. They are afraid about their jobs, keeping their jobs, their income comes from them. So it seems as though it has no consequences. But actually it does have consequences. Because you do live in an interconnected world. So therefore, this arrogance also, you dig your own, decline, you cause your own decline. Equal is also kind of similar. Maybe, sometimes you had those dreams, things come true, then you again, this whole big thing that, this control, I control everything, this illusion of control. And the reality is you're not in control. Isvara is in control because Isvara in form of laws. So one point or the other, that reality will come in front of you. And when it comes in front of you, the bubble that you have built will collapse. And when it collapses, it's hard because it shakes you. So that means here also this is a problem. If it is less, then what? Anger, frustration, sadness, whatever, victim, thinking that I am a victim, somebody did something to me, or I am not good enough. Lots of notes. And if it is opposite, you are like writing off life. You are not only angry with one person, you are angry with the world. So that means what has happened is that your mindset, first of all, the things don't happen and your mindset, or they happen, but your mindset has taken so many distortions. And all those distortions are going to affect your decision making. It is not possible that you have all these distortions and they don't affect your decision making. So the decision making will give you their consequences. So then what happens is you create this negative loop. Your decision making is affected, then it will be further distorted, The further distorted means consequences are even little worse than what we started with. Your conclusions here become firmer. So this is where, by age of 40s or 50s, this is what we call midlife crisis. Everything that you thought of, that you thought when you were growing up, I'll have a beautiful home, nice family, big car, big home, we'll go on a vacation, we'll have a great time together, we'll be nurturing our kids, send them to best schools, they will be really great learners, and then they will have lovely family, and then I'll play with my grandchildren. This is what you think when you, and then as the life starts unfolding itself and it starts showing all these different colors and different things, you're like, oh, what is this? What has happened, right? So, so this is how it is. So now, the only way you can put it all in order is what? You can't change the world. The only thing that you can do is put yourself in order. And how do you put yourself in order? By entering relationship with Ishvara. That is your anchor. So, karma phala tyagaha. Karma phala tyagaha doesn't mean that you don't expect result. This is a common advice that is given in the name of Gita. You just keep doing things and you don't expect result. How is it possible for anybody to do any action without expecting result? If you have no result in mind, what are you going to do tomorrow? You're going to get up, you have nothing in mind, no result in mind. What will you do? Sleep. Right? So this is, Gita is not talking about not to expect result. Where does this advice come from? It comes from when you're expecting this so-called more, equal, less and opposite is with reference to your expectation, right? So, you're, now the wrong logic that they use is, it's your expectation which then creates all these subsequent problems. So what is the easiest way to get rid of all of this? Not to have any expectations. Right? This is what we call oversimple logic. So when you don't have any expectation, just roam around life, and you have no expectations. Where is failure? Where is this? More or less. You don't have to complain about anything. Just float with life. But unfortunately, this will make you a loser. You don't want to be a loser in life. So that means any action that you perform, you have something in mind. You have traveled so far and you have come to Rishikesh. What is the result that you have in mind? You'll get something from this retreat, right? You didn't just come with no expectation. Nobody does anything in life without some expectation. The question is, when things don't happen as you expect, how are you going to respond? Inbuilt in an action is your expectation. That is rational belief. But things don't always happen as you expect. So what happens then? What is your response? That is what is going to make you the person who is connected to Ishvara. The person who is connected to Ishvara is able to accept the fact that, hey, this has not happened, but there is a cause. You don't jump to conclusion. Try to see what you can do to change that situation or to solve that situation. And you also understand that there are so many variables over which I have no control. And those variables, either I can be helpless or pretend that it doesn't bother me, or I can pray. Really, if the results are coming from Isvara, Isvara is a karma phaladata. And there are all these complex laws. In addition to following dharma and swadharma, with this whole complexity which is going to govern all of this, I can add prayers.
Sankalpa.
You have to make sankalpa. Sankalpa is a very important part of guiding the prayer to that given outcome. Okay, so this is, and the more and more prayerful you become, all these reactions will begin to be less. As the reactions are less, the mind space is freed to look for solutions. Yeah. And sometimes solutions have to be bold. Why not? We have to learn to take, responsibility for our life. But that is one able to do because, and this is why I think somebody asked that suppose you don't even know whether this is good for you or not, then you don't need to ask for that. You can change your prayer and you can say, what, this is what I think is good. Please guide me in the right direction. You can be so creative in your prayer. You can say exactly what you think. So if you're not sure, you have to say, I'm not sure. Then what? Show me what next. So, this is how the person lives the life. What? That understanding Isvara, offering one's karma phala to Isvara. So this is in some other place in Bhagavad Gita. This is told prasada buddhi. Prasada buddhi means anything when you go to a temple and you offer something to Isvara. What is it called? It's the action. You offer something to Isvara. Then what you receive is what? Prasada. What you receive from Isvara is prasada. Now you change this imagery and you take it as the whole universe being Isvara and your action is an offering to Isvara. And what comes back to you is prasada from Ishvara. The outcome which is prasada of Ishvara. Uses small imagery and extent. Then that prasada, whether, so suppose you prefer laddu, but prasada comes as one piece of sugar. Right? Less than what you expect. Sometimes the priest forgot to give you anything. Opposite. Right? And then sometimes he gives you, I went to Bangkok this time and he had offered some whole lunch to Devi. And then he came and gave me whole lunch that he offered to Devi. Much more than I expected. Sometimes equal to what I expected. I got my laddu that I wanted. But everything is taken with an attitude of gratefulness. That's how you convert your relationship with the world. So this is the verse. We will see the next.
Is this all behavior and all taught in Vedanta?
So what?
So many intricacies, how to behave and all.
Yeah, so this is how the verse is.
We are going right in depth of the meaning.
Yeah, that's the thing, that this is why you need a teacher, no? If you otherwise you can look up the dictionary meaning and you put it together and then you have the meaning. This is the value added teacher.
More than what you expect.
That's a tagline, Shona. That's a great tagline. Yeah, that's a good discover Vedanta, more than what you
So sometimes we say that we should take the results of our actions with equanimity. Instead of that, what I feel it's saying is that take the results of your action with gratitude, which is different from equanimity.
Exactly.
Is that a right?
Yeah, that's a better word. And equanimity, as I explained yesterday, we kind of feel as though equanimity means as though we should have no emotion at all. should not be disappointed, no sadness, no anger, no fear. But that's not possible. That there is a range of emotions which are within Ishvara's order, but they become excess because of our own stories. So that has to be reduced. So every situation will also bring corresponding emotion, right? So instead of trying to kind of not have any emotion, we just, our emotions flow. So that is also, but also here what you say is understand the consequences coming from within that problem solving mode rather than complaining.
I think equanimity is a little bit like what you described about the prasada, whether you got the full plate or the laddu or sugar, you were happy with any of the results. I think that is really what equanimity means. You're okay with this and you're also okay with that.
That's not possible in life. Nobody can say, oh, I got promotion, I'm happy, I didn't get promotion, I'm equally happy. This is a kind of a cliche Gita. But unfortunately, Gita is a little bit more, unfortunately, Gita is more nuanced. Otherwise, you know what, then it's very easy. Lord Krishna is telling you, always be happy because everything is coming from me. So from tomorrow, you're always happy, doing whatever. Does that really happen? Ask yourself. Can it happen? There is so much understanding that is behind these simple sentences. You have to re-understand the world. It's not about be happy, whatever you get. That's a simple. That's an advice. Here it is teaching. Teaching means the scales of your understanding of the world, your place in it, Ishvara, your roles, your responsibilities, how the results come, the emotions, the dynamic of emotions, all that has to be understood. That is teaching. Otherwise it becomes simple, yeah, be happy. Oh, everybody tries to be happy, but ends up not being happy. So this is the problem. Okay.
That would be, let's say, as a summary, correct to say that when you get more equal, then you're like grateful. You understand that it's a lot of factors, not just you. And at the same, so you kind of, you accept it, but at the same time, you know it's bigger than you. And then when less or opposite, then it's kind of problem solving mode. You're like, okay, it's not what I want, so let's see what can be done. So
yeah. Here when you get more or equal, you have to understand that you alone did not get it, right? So that means it required participation of so many people. And the minute you understand it, it required participation of so many people, you'll be grateful rather than arrogant. Because it's a fact. It's not something you're kind of wishful thinking. It's the truth. So in Bhagavad Gita, please understand, it's not a book of advice. Lord Krishna is not advising Arjuna, oh, you should be like this, you should be like that, you have to always be happy, you don't think about result. He's teaching Arjuna. What is he teaching? He's teaching a very big picture about the world. And as you begin to understand the very big picture of the world, your attitudes, your behaviors, how you make your choices, how do you respond to the result, your emotional life, everything undergoes a very fundamental change. Fundamental change based on your revised understanding. It's a very big teaching. Okay? Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.